Okay, so dry mount process. This is the dry mount press. It is essentially a giant iron. There is a hot element on top. Then you have what's known as your cover board, which you'll feel that this is kind of like laminated so that it won't stick to the print. You just want to make sure that this thing is nice and clean prior to popping your print in there. If it is not clean, whatever is on there has a possibility of transferring to your print or to your materials. So you check this thing. This is its open, kind of ready to accept work position. This is its relaxed or heating up position. This is also the position that you leave it in when you leave. And that means that there's a print inside. So usually, there we go. Usually it's in this position. So just kind of get used to that. Here we have our plug-in for this, and then we have a plug-in for what's known as a tack iron. Tack iron is how we get our dry mount tissue to stick to our photograph, and we'll be doing that in just a second here. The tack iron obviously is another hot element, and if I place it on something that's like plastic or whatever, then we have the chance of setting fire to things. So, or on top of the electrical cord. So as we dock that thing, it's a good idea to dock it on this lead piece there. Materials that I use for this are generally in the top. So we've got mat board, super clean one, just kidding. And directions on how to do this found right here. QR code on the top, which will link to those directions, which will also link to this video. In this pack here, we have our dry mount tissue. It does not have a front or a back. They're both the same. And essentially this is heat activated glue. So once this gets hot, it melts and creates a permanent bond between your image and the mat board below. All right, so we'll keep one of those out to be used, putting the rest of them back in their cool little box. There's also, for some seriously light reading, more information on the dry mount press itself. As we do this for the first couple times, it's good to have these instructions out just so that you know what the heck is going on and what to do. It does take this thing about 10 minutes to get hot. So it now is sitting right around the temperature that it needs to be, which is 190 degrees to 200 degrees. Plus or minus is really not going to kill the print. We plug these things in, and then we unplug them when we leave, and then this cord goes back up. It's kind of a retractable cord. But the last thing you want to do is leave things plugged in so that somebody kicks in. Then your tools go all over the place. Okay, so keep this handy. There's our tissue. This is a decent working space, but do note that it gets used for printmaking, so there could be something nasty on there that you set your photograph on and then hurts your print. So using something like a piece of newsprint or just an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, something so that when you put this print essentially face down, that it's not going to encounter something bad. Okay, so I've got my print, I got my dry mount tissue, and the overall idea of what we're going to try to do here is get these two things to fuse together. Then we'll cut this down. Then we'll see how it fits on this 11 by 14 board. We'll fuse those together, and then we will pop it in the press and then fuse all four corners and everything together. So we just want to really provide a certain space so that this thing doesn't shift around on us. So the tendency is to want to chop our prints down right off the get-go and get rid of all this white stuff. Not a great idea because it's really hard to get perfect registration between this glue and that image. So we want to get the image and the glue to stick together prior to chopping this thing down. Okay, so we're going to take this, I'm going to place it face down, and you'll notice that my dry mount tissue does not cover my entire 8.5 by 11 sheet, which is fine because our prints usually have a 1-inch margin on them. Because these dry mount tissues are based on 8 by 10 pictures. All right. So those two are lined up. I got my tacking iron here. Yes, it's hot. All right, so this is just a gentle place in the middle and a small drag out to one of the corners. I'm gonna dock this. and check. And I'm going to try to get these two apart very gently, and it looks like that's going to stick. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a little bit of my glue has changed. If you leave the tack iron in place for too long, it can actually melt the other side of the paper. So it's a good idea to do this gently, do a little movement, check it. If it didn't stick, do it again. Could mean that your tack iron needs a little bit more time to heat up. Okay, so from this is when we go and trim this print. Okay, so this is the Rototrim. This is a 36-inch one. We've got 24s. The 36, I think, is the biggest. It is directional, so as you use this thing, if you cut in the wrong direction, like you have your paper over here and you try to cut, doesn't work so hot. It does have a guide, which is usually a good thing to remind myself that if I'm up against here, and then if I move my Rototrim across, then it will cut nice and straight. Ding. So, only likes to go in that direction. So when I'm trimming my print down, I can think about like cropping certain things or straightening things out. Most of the cropping you should do is within the software program, so that as you trim it down, then you know that all you want to do is trim off little bits of edges. For my first cut, I am going to trim off just a tiny bit. First cut, super important after your first cut to trap it up against that guide. This is how you're gonna make sure that you're doing 90-degree angles. If you do your second cut kind of freehand, there's no way to tell that those two are 90-degree angles, and then when you put it on the 11x14, it looks all wonky. So making sure that I am going up against the guide after my first cut. So my first cut can actually be at an angle, so long as my second cut is based off of that first initial cut. So I'm going up against, I'm moving over. You'll notice that this plastic guide isn't where the cut will be. If you look past the guide onto the metal edge down here, you'll see that the metal edge sticks out a little bit further than the plastic guide. So as you cut, you will take note of that on your first couple of cuts. All right, so I'm gonna trim. I'm gonna move out, move back, cut side against the fence, over. The other thing is the print can move on you. So if you don't trap this thing down or trap it over here, your cut might shift it and then you're gonna lose your 90-degree angles again. If you place your fingers on the plastic part, there's a good chance that you'll run into your finger. So just making sure that your fingers are out of the way as you are moving that across. Also, I always remove the print prior to moving this back, just in case it likes to shift on you and then you snipe a corner of it. So cut side, against, over.
If you don't line it up perfectly the first time and get a little bit of a white edge, is it easy to cut the little?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this thing is super accurate in that you could, actually I'm gonna cut this little white dot off. Even if I wanted to trim off that much, like it can trim that small amount. Obviously this is not a good call. So I'm gonna trim off that entire white, almost. White portion off the edge there. Okay, so done all my trimming. Now I can leave my cutter. I can also leave my stuff here because my mom will clean up after me. All right, so I'm grabbing all this crap and we're gonna take care of that. Okay, so I've got, again, perfect registration between my tissue and my print. Sweet. Let's go back and dry mount this thing. And, okay, so, these white mat boards will be placed within this drawer for you to grab. What you need to take note of when you grab a mat board is that there's actually two sides of white here. That one is very cream and one is very blue. And you might find that your print does better on cream or better on the whiter or bluer side. So just popping that down, placing my print on top. Obviously this is a color photograph, which color is also going to be affected by what's surrounding it. But you'll find with your black and white pictures that the warmer one will indeed warm up your picture. The cooler one will cool it down. So having that as kind of like a benchmark that, oh, there's two sides, I can use that. We've also got some really bad mat boards with color on them. Just make sure you're mounting on the white side of that. Although I'm probably gonna just replace those with these guys here. Okay, so how do we get this thing the way it's supposed to look on here? I really just do this by eye. You can do math to figure all this out. Like if you butt this over to the side, you measure the distance here, you cut that in half, and then you measure out. The main thing about this whole process is that you'll want more room on the bottom. If you have equal sides all around, you're gonna note that it's going to feel heavy on the bottom, or that there's not enough room on the bottom. It's a gallery standard, museum standard to have more room on the bottom. So if you go in to a museum, you'll find that, oh, indeed, this is true. Usually it's 3 inches and 3.5 on the bottom. With something like this, especially with the horizontal pictures, it's very easy to get your sides and your top to be about the same, and then to have a little bit more room on the bottom. If you can get the sides and the top to be the same, that's optimal. But sometimes our prints have kind of different aspect ratios to them, so they might be more linear or something like that. The whole gist of this is just to make sure you've got a little bit more space on the bottom and that you've got equal sides. Okay, so I could find a ruler and measure this out, or I could simply grab something and about there. Dang, that's pretty good, Adam. So just double checking my sides, then I'm doing a visual check from top to bottom. I can move this thing down just a pinch. And then obviously I want my lines to be nice and straight, edge to edge. The next thing that I do, I'm gonna actually put my hand on the print. So I recommend like having a piece of letter paper or maybe a spare mat board and just placing that on top. Because what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the tack iron, I'm gonna pull this picture back, and then I'm gonna fuse the dry mount tissue to the mat board. So I got my tack iron. Now I'm there we go. I moved it ever so slightly. That looks better. So I'm pulling up this edge. And now we've got the dry mount tissue below. I'm gonna take the tack iron and heat those two, dragging this ever so slightly with just a little bit of pressure. And then that fuses it to the board. So now, when I pick this thing up and move it over here, it's not going to move on me. So that now, yes, my angles look pretty good, and it's ready to go in the press. This press is about 175, 180 right now. My benchmark is to be, according to this sheet, between 190 and 200. It also says 70 seconds. So since it's a little low, probably just need to cook it a little bit longer in here. Somebody want to set a timer for 80 seconds? So I'm placing this underneath the, what is this thing called? The cover board? Sure.
So if the cover board is dirty, what do we do?
Turn it over, try to clean it, one of those. There's a secondary one under here. 80 seconds?
Yeah.
On it? On it. Here's a secondary one. most of the stuff that gets on that thing, it's really robust and typically can be cleaned off. More questions? You'll find on this list that there's more involved with how I instruct you to do this, but it does have a little bit of I guess measuring and stuff. It's okay to do it by eye, so long as your end product looks fine. If you find that you're slightly askew or slightly off, or this side has more room than that side, it's perfectly okay to trim that thing down a tiny bit to level that off. Last thing you want is something that doesn't look quite right. So a little bit of trim is okay. Usually when you put an 11 by 14 into a frame, they give you a little bit of cushion on that. So if you got to trim off an inch, that's usually going to be a problem. Oh yeah. Groovy? Okay. So I take my print out. Corners look good. I'm gonna pop this cover sheet on top. I'm gonna grab the Scary Baby book and I'm gonna put that on there to create a nice weight between, so that as that thing cools, it's gonna fuse nicely to the paper in general. That's scary.
Does that book just exist to set on top of prints?
Yes, it's the main reason it was made.
Yes.
It actually doesn't open.
Oh.
I'm just kidding. Okay, so it doesn't take long for this thing to cool down. There you go.
Voila.
Sweet, eh? Makes any photograph look great. Even this one. I'm just kidding. Sorry, Maya. Okay, so after my prints are good, no other students want to participate in this thingy, I'm just going to turn off, click, unplug that guy, put this in its resting position. There we go. And then return this to its space. Almost. There we go. And this guy over to here. There we go. Voila. And we're set. My supplies, if I put anything else out, like this book, really should go back as well. And then this and some of these, all this stuff I'll put back in the drawer too. We good? Thank you.